thought for a few seconds. He held her like a man holding the last ember of a fire. The corridor lights above them hummed, cold and bright. But the warmth that mattered came from the woman in his arms, not from heat, but from the slow, stubborn glow knitting along her skin. Her dress, if it could be called that, shimmered with threads of light that traced the paths of wounds closing beneath them. Around them, the ship's medics stood frozen, instruments useless, faces pale under helmets. The human's hands trembled, but his eyes were steady with a kind of quiet astonishment that did not know surrender. Ethan had seen death, enough to read its shape. This was not that, not yet. The alien princess, no taller than a woman from the frontier worlds and impossibly slender, breathed shallowly, lips parting like someone tasting air for the first time. Her skin bore the iridescent patterns of her people, delicate lines that looked like circuitry made by nature. Where metal spikes had torn her, gold light now threaded and sealed the flesh, pulsing in time with his heartbeat. Ethan did not understand the mechanics of it. He only understood that he had to hold on. They had found her on the battlefield 2 hours earlier. A column of royal guards shattered on a moon of black glass, an armored carrier smoking, and the princess lying where the sky cracked. The humans had been there by chance, a reconnaissance team probing the ruins for salvage and survivors. What followed had been chaos. Radio silence, the sudden arrival of a patrol of the Alliance's ships, and somehow, a decision to bring the fragile royal back aboard the human cruiser rather than hand her over to the Empire's medical wards. Suspicion had danced at the edge of every face as the princess was carried through the gangway. She wore no crown. She wore wounds and an expression of wary disbelief. Ethan remembered the moment the medics declared her past saving. He remembered the sterile hum of the triage bay, the flat lines on the readouts, the way the lead surgeon, an older woman named Claire, looked away. No protocol for this, she had said, more to herself than to anyone. The translator on the princess's collar had rendered only fragments, please, a name, and the word for home. Then the monitors began to fail. Machines cannot stitch whatever this was. Machines could not respond to the light. He had not meant to touch her. It had happened because hands do what minds cannot always command. He moved to steady the princess as the stretcher bucked, and one of the straps gave. His palm landed over a long gash along her ribs, and in that instant, something unspoken shifted. The glow that had been a thin thread swelled like a tide. Pain lines smoothed on her face. The pulse at her throat found rhythm again. The ship held its breath. "We need to document this," Claire whispered, but Ethan felt the whisper like static. The medics took a step forward as if to pry him away, to return him to procedure, but the princess opened her eyes. They were the color of storm-tossed seas, and she looked at him as of a dawn she had not expected to find. For a breath, the wounded officer who had carried her looked small beside the enormity of what was happening. Then the human instinct returned, the need to protect, to do what was right even when the rules were unclear. Outside, the war raged in fragments. Sensor feeds showed skirmishes, a cruiser exploding like a harvested star. Inside, something far more fragile and far more dangerous had been reborn in a corridor meant for metal and order. If word of this miracle leaked, everything would change. Empires would reposition, scholars and preachers would swarm, and a single human touch could become the spark that rewrites alliances. Ethan carried that weight without planning to. He cradled the princess as one might cradle a newborn, as one might cradle a relic that could either sanctify or condemn. She whispered something in her tongue, and the translator coughed up a phrase, "Life from your hands." The words were clumsy through the device, and yet they landed with the impact of a verdict. Ethan shifted his grip to free a hand to steady her head, and the light along her torso settled like silk. The medics exchanged looks that carried both fear and hope. Claire moved closer, her face set. She began to record, fingers flying over a holopad. Protocol demanded names, details, and a chain of custody. Humanity, however, had never been content to let protocol be the only ruler. He thought of the frontier worlds where humans scavenged and fixed what others left behind, where hope was a practiced skill. He thought of the nights on supply runs when a burnt-out engine still had a chance if someone would dare to touch it and coax it back to life. Something in him recognized the same stubbornness in that alien life, a refusal to yield. He had not healed her with knowledge or instruments. He had healed her with touch, with the raw, reckless compassion that had built their colonies and kept people alive in the cold. That simple, messy human thing might be the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy. As the princess's breathing deepened and the last threads of light faded to a soft, steady glow beneath her skin, Ethan allowed himself a single sliver of relief. It was too early to call it a miracle. It was too early to name it at all. But the corridor, with its line of watchful faces and humming lights, had become a place where stories began, and where an ordinary human had just rewritten one. The ship's engines rumbled like a low storm beneath their feet, a reminder that even miracles had to bow to motion and momentum. Ethan followed Claire and the medics to the corridor, still carrying the princess as if she were made of something between glass and starlight. The glow under her skin had dimmed to a faint shimmer, pulsing with her heartbeat. She was alive now, undeniably, impossibly alive, and everyone who saw her seemed unsure whether to celebrate or fear what that meant. The medbay doors hissed open, flooding them with sterile, white light. The room had been cleared, tables pushed against walls, monitors recalibrated, a communication console half disabled in case someone panicked and tried to broadcast what had happened. A miracle could be a gift, but it could also be a weapon, and no one on this ship knew which side the galaxy would take if the truth spread. "Put her here," Claire instructed, tapping a reinforced medical bed. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were bright with the shock she was trying to hide. Gently. Ethan lowered the princess, expecting her body to tense or tremble, but she remained calm. Her hand, delicate, cool, almost weightless, clung lightly to the sleeve of his uniform. Not out of fear, but something else. Recognition? Instinct? He didn't know. He only knew that when he tried to step back, her grip tightened. "She doesn't want you to move," one of the younger medics murmured. "She's disoriented," Claire countered, but her tone lacked conviction. Translator, activate. The small device at the prince's collar blinked awake. She swallowed, eyes fluttering open. When she looked at Ethan, there was a softness there that felt ancient, an understanding carried by someone whose life had stretched far beyond human ears. "You," she whispered, the translator shaping her voice into something gentle, melodic. "Your touch restores." Ethan flinched at the attention suddenly focused on him. The medics paused. A recording drone hovered silently near the ceiling. "I didn't restore anything," he said. "I just tried to help." The princess blinked, confusion touching her expression. "You humans do not heal like this?" She looked down at her mended wounds, fingertips brushing the luminous lines that had once been torn open. "Your life force, it answered mine. Why?" Claire's gaze flicked between them. She was already forming hypotheses, questions. There would be endless tests, endless layers of politics, because if a human could heal one of the royal line, a line said to be woven with the light of their ancestors, then everything the Alliance believed about themselves might crack. "Let's start simple," Claire said quietly. "What's your name?" The princess studied Ethan again as though drawing courage from his presence. Her breathing steadied. "She am Lyrana," she said softly, "daughter of the High Circle, keeper of the first Radiance." Her eyes clouded with memory. "I was." Her voice broke on the last word, a fracture opening at the edges of her calm. Ethan recognized grief, deep and raw. "What happened to your people?" he asked before Claire could stop him. Lyrana's gaze drifted toward the ceiling, toward something far beyond the metal and light. "We were betrayed," she said, "by those who sought the Radiance for themselves. They struck without warning. They broke our shields, silenced our guardians. I fled with the last fragment of our core memory, but the hunters followed. They found us on that moon. She shivered, though the room was warm. I did not think I would survive. You were nearly right, Claire said softly. We couldn't stabilize you with anything we had. But he did, Lyrana whispered. Her gaze returned to Ethan with an intensity that unsettled him. Your touch reached the radiance. That should be impossible. Ethan shifted, uncomfortable. I don't even know what the radiance is. It is what lives in us, Lyrana said. What binds our memories, our strength, our lineage. It is our soul made light. The medics exchanged glances again, but Ethan focused only on her. Then maybe it reacted to something in me. Or maybe you're just stronger than you think. Lyrana smiled faintly, a flicker of warmth fighting through exhaustion. You do not understand the danger this brings you. If the hunters discover what you can do, they will not allow a human to hold such power. Before Ethan could respond, the ship shuddered violently. Alarms blared. The lights flickered from white to red. Claire cursed under her breath. Bridge, report. A crackling voice answered, tense and breathless. Unidentified vessels just dropped out of warp. They're scanning for life signatures, specifically hers. Lyrana's eyes widened. The hunters had arrived, and they weren't coming for the princess alone. They were coming for the man who had healed her. The alarms kept screaming, each pulse of red light painting the medbay in frantic flashes. Ethan braced himself as the floor trembled again, the ship's engines roaring in protest. Somewhere far forward, metal groaned, not from damage, but from the sudden strain of evasive maneuvers. The hunters hadn't fired yet, which meant they were confident. Too confident. Claire snapped orders at the medics, her calm collapsing into urgency. Secure the room, lock down the bay, now. Ethan moved on instinct, stepping between Lyrana and the doorway as if his body alone could shield her from ships capable of tearing apart continents. Lyrana sat upright with effort, her fingers gripping the edge of the medbed. The glow beneath her skin dimmed and brightened, like a heartbeat learning to keep pace with fear. What do they want from you? Ethan asked. Lyrana swallowed. The radiance within me, the last piece of my people's core memory. It carries everything, our histories, our bloodline, our defenses, our ancient knowledge. If they claim it, the galaxy will kneel. Claire turned sharply. And if they take you alive? Lyrana shook her head. They will not need me alive. A cold silence followed. Then the ship bucked again, harder this time. Gravity flickered. A tray of instruments clattered across the floor. Ethan grabbed the rail to steady himself, while Lyrana clenched her jaw and stayed upright with surprising resolve. Bridge to medbay, the intercom blared. They've latched onto our hull with boarding clamps. We've got incoming hostiles. Damn it, Claire muttered. We can't fight them off in here. One of the medics pointed at Ethan. You need to get her out. The hunters aren't after us. They want her. If they breach this room, they will breach, Lyrana said. They always do. Her resignation lit something very human inside Ethan, something defiant. Not today, he said. Not on this ship. He stepped closer to her, lowering his voice. Can you walk? I do not know, she admitted. Then lean on me. When she touched him, her fingers glowed faintly, like a lamp finding power through a broken wire. Ethan felt the warmth pulse into his arm, a soft vibration that wasn't pain or heat, just connection. The medics paused, watching with silent awe. Lyrana stood, slow but steady, leaning into Ethan's support. Her breath hitched, but her legs held. She looked small, fragile even, but there was something unbreakable in her eyes. We need to get her to the inner decks, Claire said, pulling open a drawer and removing an emergency keycard. These hallways will be the first point of breach. The hunters won't care who they kill on the way. Ethan sealed the card into his wrist terminal, then slung Lyrana's arm around his shoulder. What about the crew? They'll hold, Claire said, though her voice cracked. They always do. The medbay doors parted just as another tremor shook the ship. Klaxons wailed overhead. Sparks rained from a blown conduit as smoke drifted into the hallway. The distant thump of metal on metal echoed. Boarding clamps tightening, or worse, hole-cutting drills beginning their hungry work. Claire turned to the medics. "You two with me. We'll reroute wounded and reinforce the barriers. Buy them time." She faced Ethan and Lyrana again. "Go. Now." Ethan pushed into the corridor, guiding Lyrana as she leaned into him. Her breathing remained slow, controlled, but the glow in her wounds flickered with every step. "I weakened the Radiance when I fled," she whispered, guilt lining her words. "It should have protected me. It should have shielded us, but I used too much." "Then you'll recover," Ethan said, "one step at a time." She shook her head gently. "You do not understand. If the hunters claim the Radiance, it will unmake all you cherish. Every world will bend or burn." Ethan tightened his grip. "Then they don't get it." Ahead, the lights flickered. Shadows stretched unnaturally long. And then, boom. The hull reverberated with a deafening impact. Ethan heard shouting from the deck above, followed by the unmistakable hiss of an energy cutter curving open a sealed door. "They're inside," Lyrana whispered. Ethan quickened his pace, pulling her toward the inner lift. "Not here. They aren't." They reached the lift just as the lights snapped fully out. Emergency strips along the walls glowed blue, barely illuminating the corridor. He slapped the keycard to the panel, and the doors shuddered open. He guided Lyrana inside, then hit the descent command. The doors sealed them into a small cocoon of dim light. For a moment, the noise above faded. Ethan exhaled shakily. "We'll get you somewhere safe." Lyrana studied him with an expression he couldn't read. Wonder? Fear? Something deeper. "You touch the Radiance, and you still choose to protect me. Why?" He hesitated. The honest answer felt too simple for such a complicated moment. "Because you needed help, and humans don't leave people behind." The lift hummed as it descended, and then it jolted to a stop. The lights flickered. Something had seized the lift from outside. Lyrana's eyes widened. Ethan's hand went to his weapon. Above them, metal screeched. The hunters had found them. The lift groaned like some metal beast under pressure, swaying as something above it tore into the shaft. The sound was unmistakable, precision claws cutting into reinforced plating. Ethan instinctively pulled Lyrana close, positioning himself between her and the ceiling. Dust drifted down in thin streams. The lift lights flickered, then steadied at a dim, frightened glow. "They're opening the shaft," Lyrana whispered. Her voice trembled, not with fear for herself, but fear for what her survival, or her capture, might unleash. Ethan braced his boots, checking his sidearm. "How many hunters are we dealing with?" Lyrana closed her eyes briefly, sensing something beyond the physical. 3 ships, a full seeker squad on board. They are swift, merciless, and bred to pierce defenses. She opened her eyes again. "And they can smell the Radiance." "Great," Ethan muttered. "So hiding isn't an option." A long, jagged crack spread across the lift ceiling as metal peeled. A pale, jointed appendage, like a mechanical insect's arm, slid through the opening, its glowing tip scanning the air. Ethan fired 3 rounds into it before he could think twice. The shots sparked off the thing's plating, managing only to make it recoil. The hunters now knew exactly where they were. The lift shuddered again. Something heavy landed above it, followed by the scrape of boots, or what passed for boots among the hunters' kind. Lyrana clutched Ethan's sleeve with one hand. The glow beneath her skin intensified and flickers, as if responding not to danger, but to his fear. "We need to move," she whispered urgently. The emergency hatch at the back of the lift caught Ethan's eye. If the shaft wasn't already compromised below, they might descend manually. He holstered his weapon and pried open the panel with his shoulder, forcing it to bend enough to get his fingers in. With a grunt, he wrenched it open. A narrow maintenance crawl space yawned behind it, lit only by faint blue strips along the floor. "Inside," he said. Lyrana didn't argue. She slid in with surprising grace, her slender frame fitting the cramped space easily. Ethan followed, sealing the hatch as much as he could behind them. The moment it clicked back into place, metal screeched above as the hunters forced the lift open fully. The crawl space sloped downward, narrow enough that Ethan had to crouch. The air smelled faintly of lubricant and recycled oxygen. He kept one hand on the wall, the other hovering near his weapon. The hum of energy cutters vibrated through the shaft behind them. "They are relentless," Lyrana whispered. "They do not stop, not until their target is claimed." "Well," Ethan said, "that's comforting." Despite the panic they fled, she let out the faintest laugh, a soft exhale he felt more than he heard. They moved quickly, guided by the slanted floor, until the crawl space opened into a small junction chamber filled with dormant machinery, pipes, and access letters. Ethan checked the schematic etched on the wall panel. "If we take this ladder down 2 levels, we'll hit the engineering flank. There's a blast door there, one of the strongest on the ship." Lyrana touched the ladder, her fingers trembling. "I am not strong enough to descend quickly." "I've got you," he said simply. He climbed down first, then guided her feet onto each rung. She followed slowly, carefully, her glow flickering in and out like a candle fighting wind. Halfway down, her strength faltered. Her foot slipped. Ethan caught her waist with both hands, steadying her before she fell. Her breath caught, her body pressed against him for a heartbeat too long. Something warm pulsed between them, an energy that hummed beneath her skin and spiraled outward. Lyrana swallowed. "The Radiance, it responds to you." "Yeah, it's not exactly subtle about it." She blinked. "This connection, it should not exist. The Radiance binds only to its lineage. And yet," she hesitated, searching his eyes, "why you?" "I'm just a soldier, a maintenance guy when I'm not patching holes in the hull. Nothing about me makes sense for this." "Yet, here we are," she murmured. Before Ethan could respond, the deck vibrated sharply. A thunderous metallic thunk echoed up the shaft. The hunters had located the crawl space. And they were fast. "We need to move, now," Ethan urged. They reached the bottom just as a second impact rattled the ladder. Ethan pushed Lyrana through the hatch into the engineering flank. Steam hissed somewhere nearby. The corridor here glowed faintly orange from the exposed heat conduits. He slammed his keycard against the control panel. The massive blast door rumbled, then started to close. Footsteps clattered in the shaft behind him, multiple, fast, inhumanly coordinated. "Run!" Ethan shouted. Lyrana stumbled forward and Ethan followed, guiding her by the elbow. The blast door lowered agonizingly slow. A shadow appeared behind them. Tall, armored, featureless except for 2 dim predatory lights where eyes should have been. The hunter lunged. Ethan fired twice. The bullets bounced. The thing reached an arm forward, but the blast door slammed down between them with a deafening clang. Silence. Ethan exhaled shakily, Lyrana leaning into him again, her heartbeat fluttering against his side. "They're going to know exactly where we are," she whispered. "Yeah," Ethan said, catching his breath. "But now we've got a wall between us." Lyrana looked up at him, eyes glowing faintly with radiance and something more fragile. "For now, but they will not stop." The blast door sealed with a rumbling finality that echoed down the engineering flank. For a moment, Ethan allowed himself a single breath, just one, before the reality settled back over him like a tightening net. The hunters were on the other side. They would regroup. They would find another route. And every second they bought was a thread thinning beneath the blade. Emergency lighting cast long orange bars across the corridor, striping Lyrana's face with alternating warmth and shadow. She leaned against the wall, one hand pressed over her ribs. The glow under her skin was weakening again, its rhythm uneven. "You're fading," Ethan said. "Yes," she admitted. "Healing drained what radiance I had left. And your presence." Her eyes flickered to his hands. "It stabilizes me, but it does not restore the source." Ethan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "What does restore it?" Lyrana hesitated. Her throat tightened. "A core sanctuary, a place where the radiance pools, where the memories of my line are kept. Without it, I remain only a fragment of what I should be, and even that fragment is fragile." "So we find one." Her expression softened, as if she wished the universe obeyed human simplicity. "The nearest sanctuary is gone, burned when they attacked my world. There may be another, but it lies far beyond this region of space." "We'll get you there," Ethan said without thinking. Lyrana looked at him as though the promise wounded her. "You offer hope too easily. That's called being human." Before she could answer, the deck beneath them vibrated, lighter this time, more distant. Engineering was vast. The hunters would need time to navigate its maze of conduits and crossbeams. Time Ethan intended to use well. He guided Lyrana deeper into the flank, where heat conduits wound like glowing arteries through the ship's spine. Steam hissed overhead. Machinery thrummed underfoot. It was a place of function, not people. Cold, loud, and merciless. A perfect place to hide, or to die unnoticed. A small alcove near the coolant regulators provided brief shelter. Ethan eased Lyrana down onto a crate and knelt in front of her, checking her breathing. Her skin had cooled. Her hands trembled. "Tell me what you need," he asked. Lyrana studied him for a long moment, her eyes reflecting the flicker of conduit lights. "I need connection, but not in the way you think. The radiance is memory, living memory. It responds to lineage, to shared life force. When you touched me, it reacted because your nature—" She reached up, fingers brushing his temple, feather soft. "Your will to protect, it strengthened the pathway." Ethan swallowed. "I'm no healer." "No," she murmured, "but you are human, and humans carry something my people have never understood." He waited. "You endure," she said. Before she could respond, a distant metallic crash rolled through the flank. Another, closer, then the shriek of a hull cutter biting into steel. The hunters had found another entrance. Ethan rose, weapon drawn. "We need to move." Lyrana attempted to stand but faltered. Ethan caught her before she fell entirely, supporting her weight easily. But as her palm pressed to his chest for balance, something changed. A pulse, warm, brilliant, flashed through her hand and into him. Ethan gasped, his vision blurring for an instant. Lines of gold flickered up Lyrana's arm, brighter than before. "What was that?" he whispered. Her eyes widened. "Your heartbeat." It called to the radiance again. She touched his shoulder gently. "This should not be possible. You are not of my lineage. And yet the radiance listens to you. Is that good or bad?" "Both," she said. "If the hunters discover this bond, they will not let you live. They cannot allow a human to wield even a fraction of the radiance." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then we make sure they don't." He helped her forward, deeper into the engineering labyrinth. Pipes hissed. Vents exhaled warm air. Every shadow felt sharper, every echo a threat. But Ethan kept moving, guiding Lyrana in the narrow spaces where metallic walls pressed close. The ship trembled again, closer now. The hunters were splitting up, approaching from multiple angles. We won't outrun them forever, Ethan admitted quietly. No, Lyrana said, her voice held not despair, but resolute. But perhaps we don't need to outrun them. Perhaps we need to turn what they seek into what they fear. He glanced at her. Meaning? Lyrana rested her hand lightly on his arm. When I flee, the radiance weakens, but when I stand, it remembers what it is. Ethan understood, not the details, but the heart of it. You want to fight. I must, she said, but I cannot do it alone. He nodded. You won't. A distant clang answered him, the unmistakable sound of metal hitting floor, heavy, rhythmic steps, multiple hunters entering the flank. Ethan shifted his grip on his weapon. Lyrana rose beside him, small but steady, her fading glow gathering itself like a breath before a scream. The hunters were coming, and this time, running was over.
The footsteps came in patterns, too even, too measured, too precise to be human. They echoed through the engineering flank like metallic heartbeats, each one drawing closer. Ethan positioned himself in front of Lyrana, raising his weapon even though he knew the rounds would barely slow the hunters down. But a soldier fights with what he has, not what he wishes for. And Ethan had more reason than ever to stand his ground. The corridor lights flickered again as the ship shifted to emergency power. Steam drifted through the air in thin white ribbons, curling around Lyrana like ghosts drawn to her glow. She stood straighter now, though her body trembled. Light pulsed under her skin, faint but gathering, as though responding to something unseen. What changed? Ethan whispered. You, Lyrana said softly. Your courage. It awakens the radiance. It feeds on conviction as much as lineage. Ethan blinked. That sounds ridiculous. Truth often does. Before he could reply, a hunter stepped into view. Tall, armored in seamless black plating, limbs jointed like a predatory insect. Its mask held no features, only two pale circles where eyes might have been, glowing with cold intelligence. It tilted its head as if studying Ethan and Lyrana. Then it moved. Fast, faster than Ethan expected. He fired 3 shots, each cracking through the corridor. The bullets sparked against its armor but didn't slow it. The hunter lunged, striking downward with its blade-like forearm. Ethan shoved Lyrana aside, rolling as the blade slammed into the floor with enough force to dent metal. He came up firing, emptying the last of his magazine into its torso. The hunter staggered but did not fall. Its head turned toward him with machine precision. It raised its arm again, and then froze. Not by choice. Golden light snaked up its limb, tracing the joints like molten wire. The hunter thrashed, jerking violently as Lyrana stood behind it, her hand raised, glow intensifying with every breath. Ethan stared, momentarily stunned. You can stop them? He asked. Lyrana shook her head. Not normally. Their armor is resistant to radiance. Her voice tightened. But your courage strengthens the bond, and the bond strengthens me. The hunter's armor cracked with a sharp metallic scream. Its legs buckled. The golden light pulsed once more. And with a final jolt, the hunter collapsed, lifeless. Ethan exhaled shakily. Okay, that was something. But Lyrana did not relax. Her glow dimmed sharply, and she swayed. Ethan caught her before she fell. You can't fight like that again, he said. She tried to answer, but her breath stuttered and her knees gave way. Ethan lifted her gently,
holding her close, feeling her trembling against him. "You can't fight like that again," he murmured. "I must," she whispered. "More will come, stronger." Ethan looked down the corridor. She was right. Already the faint echo of metal footsteps signaled reinforcements. The hunters didn't fear casualties. They adapted. If one fell, the next would learn. "How many?" Ethan asked. "6, maybe 7, she whispered, voice thin. "Right, and I've got 0 ammo." He carried her toward a cluster of machinery units, ducking behind the thickest one. Pipes ran overhead like coiled serpents. Heat radiated from turbines below the deck. It wasn't much cover, but it was something. Lyrana's fingers curled weakly into his uniform. "There is one more way." "Tell me." Her eyes lifted to his. Even exhausted, they glowed with a faint, fragile radiance. "The bond between us, it allows the radiance to move where it normally cannot." "Meaning?" "You can wield a fraction of it, but only if I let it merge through you, and only if you are willing." Ethan stared at her. "Wield it how? I don't know anything about radiance." "You don't need to," she said. "Radiance follows intention, purpose. Humans hold purpose, fiercely." "Will it hurt you?" "Yes," she said honestly. "But if we do nothing, we both die, and the radiance dies with me." Ethan hesitated long enough to process the weight of what she offered. Then he nodded. "Tell me what to do." Lyrana placed her palm over his heart, her touch feather-light, yet trembling. "Hold me," she whispered, "and let your will guide the radiance." He wrapped his arms around her, her forehead pressed to his chest. Light pulsed under her skin, gathering like a storm preparing to break. The hunters rounded the corner. 6 of them, weapons raised. Ethan's heartbeat quickened. Radiance answered. It surged through Lyrana's hand into his chest, then down his arms, bright as fire, cold as starlight. Ethan gasped as golden lines crackled along his skin like glowing veins. His vision sharpened, the air hummed around him. The hunters advanced. Ethan stepped forward. Radiance followed. A wave of golden light burst outward, slamming into the hunters like a shockwave. Armor cracked, limbs twisted. 3 hunters crashed into the walls. 2 fell to their knees, stunned. And 1, larger, stronger, kept moving, though slower now, its mask flickering with damage. Ethan clenched his fist. The radiance condensed around it. He struck. The blow landed like a meteor. The hunter shattered. Silence swept the engineering flank. Ethan stood panting, light still flickering across his arms. Lyrana drained, slumped against him. "You wield it. No human ever has," she whispered. He caught her as she collapsed fully, holding her close. Footsteps echoed again. But not hunters. Voices. Human ones. The crew had found them. But as they approached, something far more dangerous settled into Ethan's bones. He had just crossed a line the galaxy never intended for his kind. And nothing would ever be the same.
Ethan held Lyrana against him as the last shimmer of radiance faded from his skin. His breath came hard, raw in his chest. The corridors smelled of scorched alloy and ozone. Hunter bodies, if they could be called bodies at all, lay twisted in unnatural shapes across the deck. The air hummed strangely, as if the radiance still lingered, reluctant to let go. Boots echoed through the engineering flank. Flashlights cut sharp beams through the haze. Human voices rose, urgent, disbelieving, fearful.
Over here. Is that Ethan? By the stars, what happened? Ethan turned slowly as a squad of armored crew rounded the corner. Their rifles dipped uncertainly when they saw him standing beside the crumpled hunters. Their eyes bounced between him and Lyrana, and the faint golden residue still sizzling across the metal floor. Lieutenant Harrow stepped forward, visor lifting to reveal haunted eyes. We saw the energy spike from the bridge. Thought we'd lost this entire flank. His gaze fell to Lyrana in Ethan's arms. Is she alive? Barely, but alive. Harrow stared at the damaged hunters. And all of this? What did this? Ethan hesitated. The truth felt heavy. Too heavy. A human wielding Radiance was something the galaxy's powers would kill to study, or kill to silence. But lying now would fracture trust beyond repair. It was me, with her help. Silence gripped the corridor like a clenched fist. The crew exchanged looks. Not disbelief, not exactly, but something between reverence and dread. Harold swallowed. The captain needs to hear about this. Now. Ethan shifted Lyrana carefully. She needs medical care first. Real care. In privacy. If we drag her to the bridge as she is, we won't, a new voice said. Claire emerged from behind the squad, her medkit slung over her shoulder. She must have sprinted the entire way. Sweat plastered her hair to her forehead, but her eyes were sharp. Let me through. The crew stepped aside at once. Claire knelt beside Lyrana, scanning her vitals with shaking hands. Her radiance levels are unstable. She's burning through what little she has left. Lyrana stirred at the sound of Claire's voice. Her eyes opened, not glowing, but soft, human in their exhaustion. The hunters. Are they gone? For now. But more could follow. Lyrana's breath hitched. Then you must destroy the beacon and their ships. It calls others. Harold cursed. A tracking beacon. That explains their precision. Ethan looked down at Lyrana. Where is it? In their cores, protected. You cannot access it from outside. Meaning someone needs to board one. Claire snapped her head toward him. Absolutely not. You just burned half your strength using powers you don't even understand. He's the only one who can, Lyrana whispered. Claire froze. The crew fell silent again. Why? Harrow asked roughly. Lyrana lifted her trembling hand toward Ethan. Radiance recognizes intent. It obeyed him once. It may shield him long enough to reach the beacon, perhaps long enough to survive. His heart pounded, not from fear of the mission, but from the weight of what she was asking him for, what she trusted him with. What about you? He asked softly. Lyrana's lips curved in the faintest, saddest smile. My fate is tied to the Radiance. If the hunters summon their fleets, I will not survive their return. None of you will. She leaned into him weakly. Ethan, your courage woke something ancient inside me, something my people lost long ago. If anyone can do this, it is you. His chest tightened. He had never asked to carry the fate of a princess, let alone one whose life glowed like starlight beneath her skin. But she looked at him, not as a weapon, or a miracle, or an anomaly. She looked at him as a man she trusted. Harold stepped closer. If you're doing this, you're not doing it alone. I'll assemble a strike team. We board, we shut down the beacon, and we get out. He nodded. We move fast, before they regroup. Claire pressed a hand to Lyrana's forehead. She needs you to return alive. Ethan, be careful. He turned back to Lyrana. She reached for his hand, gripping it with surprising strength for someone so fragile. Come back. The Radiance. It chose you. And so do I. The words struck deeper than any blade. He leaned close, speaking softly. I'll return. I promise. Her eyes shimmered, not from radiance, but from hope. He released her gently into Claire's care and stood and faced the squad. Let's finish this. Harold nodded sharply. Gear up, boarding in 5. As the crew moved with purpose, Ethan took one last look at Lyrana. She watched him with quiet certainty, her glow faint but steady. The hunters wanted the Radiance, but the Radiance had chosen a human, and now the galaxy would learn what that meant.